This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on YouTube and then linked to the Fairfax County Capital Bikeshare program webpage. And Microsoft Teams does also offer a live captioning service, and you can find that by clicking the three dots at the top of your screen and choosing Turn on Live Captions. And once the presentation is completed, we will have a question and answer portion. And during that time, any participants can ask questions verbally. We have disabled the chat feature for this presentation, so we will not be taking written questions, but please do hold your questions until the end of the presentation. If you're calling into the meeting, we'll have instructions on how to ask questions at the conclusion of the presentation for you as well. And we also encourage everyone to submit your comments on today's presentation using the online feedback form on the county's Capital Bikeshare webpage. And again, we'll have instructions on how to do that at the end of the presentation. Before we begin, I'd like to introduce a few people who are also joining us tonight. My colleague, Zach Desjardins, is here. He's the Capital Bikeshare Program Manager for Fairfax County Department of Transportation. Also joining us is Olivia Logan from Supervisor Jimenez's office. Olivia, did you want to kick off with any opening remarks?
I'm Olivia. I handle transportation issues out of the Mason District office. So if there's anything transportation related, feel free to reach out to me. And I'm super excited about the bike share program that's coming to Mason and Braddock. And I'll kick it back to y'all.
Perfect, thank you. So to start off, I'd like to explain a little bit about how Capital Bikeshare works for those who might not be as familiar with the system. Capital Bikeshare is a bicycle transit service that allows users to rent a bike and ride to any one of our 700 plus stations in the DC metro area. One important function of Capital Bikeshare in Fairfax County is as a first and last mile connection to and from metro stations, offering people who might live or work within a mile of a metro station just a faster, more efficient way to get to and from the metro than walking or driving. In terms of ridership fees, you have the option to join Capital Bikeshare for $95 a year, which offers you unlimited 45-minute rides on the classic red bikes. And if you'd rather not commit to a membership, you can also pay $1 to unlock a bike and then 5 cents for every minute of your ride on top of that. And Capital Bikeshare also has a program that offers all low-income residents unlimited 60-minute rides on all bikes, including e-bikes. And you can find more information about that program on the Capital Bikeshare website. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. And I would also like to note that the Capital Bikeshare bikes are really designed with safety in mind. They aren't designed to go very fast. Their lights are always on when they're in use, and they're bright red, which makes them very visible. And these are just a few examples of ways that people typically use Capital Bikeshare. And then, as I mentioned, Capital Bikeshare has a program called Capital Bikeshare for All that is designed to help provide access to bikeshare for lower income residents in our area. The membership is $5 per year for any Fairfax County resident who qualifies for a state or federal assistance program. And with that membership, you're allowed unlimited free 60-minute rides on both the classic bikes and the e-bikes. And for any rides that are longer than 60 minutes, you're charged 5 cents per minute on the classic bikes and then 10 cents per minute on trips taken with e-bikes. And again, just more information on that program is available on the Capital Bikeshare website. So moving on to our proposed stations in Mason and Braddock districts, in terms of funding, these stations will be funded from a countywide earmark, and this earmark will be able to fund 14 stations in Mason district and 2 stations in Braddock district. And then in addition, we'll be able to purchase 140 additional e-bikes for our system with that money. And this is our list of proposed stations, just broken down by neighborhood and district. We have 7 stations proposed in Annandale, 2 of which are in Braddock district, 4 stations proposed in Seven Corners, and then 5 stations proposed in Bailey's Crossroads. And this is a map of our proposed station locations. The purple icons represent the proposed locations, and then the red icons represent existing bike share stations. So as you can see, the proposed station in Bailey's Crossroads will connect really nicely to the existing stations in Arlington County. And then the stations we're proposing in Seven Corners will connect really nicely to the existing stations in Falls Church. So now I'm just going to walk through each of our proposed station locations by neighborhood and starting with Annandale in Mason District. So the first location on our list is located at Heritage Drive and Rectory Drive, and the red in the images just represents where we're proposing the station. And in installing the station, we would be repurposing 2 street parking spaces. So next we have Ravensworth and Jayhawk Street. This location is in an existing no parking zone, so we would not need to repurpose any street parking spaces. We also have a location proposed at Daniels Avenue and Poplar Street, which is very close to the Eileen Garnett Civic Space. And this station will also be repurposing 2 street parking spaces. Next, we have a site proposed at Little River Turnpike and Annandale Road, and the proposed spot for that station is just on the sidewalk right there. And then our final site we have proposed in this part of Annandale is at Little River Turnpike and Medford Drive. And this station will also repurpose 2 parking spaces. And then moving on to our proposed stations in Seven Corners. First up, we have Cherry Street and Lawndale Drive. This location is in an existing no parking zone, so we would not need to repurpose any parking spaces. And this site is in a dense residential area, pretty close to the city of Falls Church. Next, we have Peyton Randolph and Wilson Drive. And this station would repurpose 2 parking spaces. And by doing that, we'd also be increasing the visibility of any pedestrians in the crosswalk. And then another location we have proposed in this area is Patrick Henry Drive and Wilston Drive. And this one would also be repurposing 2 parking spaces, and then similarly would help enhance the visibility of pedestrians in the crosswalk to oncoming vehicles by restricting the parking there. And then our final proposed station in the Seven Corners neighborhood is Patrick Henry Drive and Brook Drive. And the station is proposed in an existing no parking space, so no street parking will need to be repurposed for this one. I'll now move on to our proposed stations in Bailey's Crossroads. First up, we have a proposed location at Glen Carlin Drive and Argyle Drive. And this station would be in the existing buffer space at the corner, which is a no parking area. Next up, we have George Mason Drive and Seminary Road, which again will repurpose 2 parking spaces here. And then we have another proposed station at Carlin Springs Road and Columbia Pike, and this one will also repurpose 2 parking spaces on the street. Nearby that one, we're also proposing a station at Columbia Pike and Carlin Springs Road on the sidewalk here. And this location is very close to some of the existing stations in Arlington. And then our final proposed station in Bailey's Crossroads is at Route 7 and South Jefferson Street. And this one would repurpose 2 parking spaces along the Route 7 service road here. And then moving on to our last couple of proposed stations in Braddock District. These are both in the Annandale neighborhood, but within Braddock District's boundaries. So the first of these is Americana Drive and Americana Place. And this is proposed in an existing no parking space near some condominiums and not far from Annandale High School. And then our final proposed station we have for tonight is Patriot Drive and Inverton Road, also located here in an existing no parking area. So getting close to the end of the presentation, but before we open up the floor for questions, I'll first talk a little bit about the new electric bikes that are now part of the Capital Bikeshare system. So since 2020, we've had e-bikes in our system that have been provided by our contractor. If you're familiar with their system, they're the smaller black e-bikes. But more recently, we've introduced a newer model of e-bike, which are the larger gray bikes that you may have seen around the region. And with our grant funding, we plan to acquire more of those newer e-bikes for the county, which is great because so far they've proven to be really popular. And one other unique feature of these e-bikes is that they can be locked to a public bike rack instead of a docking station anywhere within a quarter of a mile of a station. So users aren't as limited to just going from station to station. And then additionally, worth noting that buying our own e-bikes ensures that we will continue to have e-bikes in our system, which is really important because our contractor eventually plans to phase out the black e-bikes that they've been providing for the past few years. And these are just a couple of photos of our new e-bikes. They're very easy to ride, very comfortable, even if you don't have much experience with riding an e-bike. And as I mentioned, we have established service areas for the e-bikes, so users are able to lock the e-bikes anywhere within those service areas. And on the screen here, you'll just see a couple of photos of our e-bike service areas in Reston and Tysons. And that just about concludes tonight's presentation. In terms of next steps, we will continue to work with VDOT through the grant funding process to obtain permits for these stations. Station installation will likely take place in late 2025 or 2026. And also worth noting that our next steps will also be impacted by any feedback we receive on each of these proposed stations tonight and throughout the next couple of weeks. We really value and encourage everyone to submit feedback, and the next slide will outline exactly how to do that. This feedback will be compiled and shared with Supervisors Jimenez and Walkinshaw to determine next steps for each proposed station location in their respective districts. We'll be accepting feedback for the next 2 weeks, and during that time, we'll accept feedback by email, phone, mail, or through the feedback form on the county's Bikeshare webpage. All of that information is on the screen, so just please take the time to copy that down if you plan to submit feedback on this project. So with that, we're going to go ahead and open up the meeting for questions and comments. To ask a question, just raise your virtual hand, which is located at the top of your screen next to the 3 dots. The moderator, Zach, will enable your microphone and call on you to ask the question. And when you're finished, just please make sure you lower your hand. And when you're called on, please unmute your microphone and ask your question or provide your comment. And then once you've asked your question, just be sure to mute yourself again. And then for anyone who's calling in on the phone, you can press *5 to raise your hand. And when you're called on, you can press *6 to unmute yourself. Once you've asked your question or made your comment, just press *6 again to mute yourself and then *5 to lower your hand. All right, we can go with Philip first.
Hi, Philip. I am allowing your microphone.
Okay, thanks. So it's really great to see all the stations there. My question really had to do with what's the bike infrastructure around those stations? I mean, I noticed some, like there was, some striping there, but I noticed some were like pretty much outright, in the street. So it's great to have the stations there. I'm concerned about the safety aspect of biking in some of these areas that are potentially unprotected or, even if it's a striped lane where the traffic is generally moving fairly quickly, 45 miles an hour and sometimes more. So interested how you're going to address that. Thank you.
Thanks for your question, Philip. So we have a countywide bicycle master plan, and we try to implement that as, for example, when streets are repaved. So we've added bike lanes in a number of places within Annandale. We've got more that we're hoping to do in the future. But that doesn't mean that we do have quite a few gaps and whatnot. So we do expect folks are, if they're not comfortable riding on the street, they can always ride on the sidewalk and whatnot if it's available. But point well taken. Thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Sure.
We can go to Tyler next.
Okay, Tyler, I'm allowing your microphone.
You'll just need to unmute yourself. Try hitting the unmute button at the top of your screen. And if that doesn't work, if you have a question or comment, you can submit that online to us. Doesn't seem to be letting you unmute, so we might have to move on.
Yeah,
it's like
looks like he dropped off.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Aaron, I'm going to unmute your microphone. And you need to unmute yourself, please.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for having this meeting, and thanks a lot for considering this area that doesn't have a lot of bike infrastructure. I'm a resident of Annandale in the Mason District. Very supportive of the project and appreciate you looking at our neighborhood for this type of infrastructure. I wanted to ask, first of all, are you thinking about should this be a positive phase and these stations be implemented, potentially expanding beyond the proposed stations? And I'll say the reason I ask that is a lot of these stations seem to be in residential areas, and Annandale does have some commercial hub areas. For example, where the K Market is, the block of Annandale area, as well as there's a large Mason library that may be a good potential location for a station. So I'm just wondering if there's future plans for considering once this phase is done. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. So this is definitely just a start with our locations and the Annandale area and the Mason District as a whole. With other parts of the county, such as like Ruston and Tyson, we started with just a few station, and then every couple of years we've continued to kind of add. So could definitely look at adding more stations in the future.
And I'll just add, one of the challenges that we have with this particular grant is that it has to be on public right of way. And so a lot of kind of the more commercial areas with Annandale are harder to serve because they don't have that public space. But as as things are built, we also and if stations are don't generate the trips that we expect, we can try to move them to private right of way at some time in the future. But of course, no guarantees. But we have done that in other parts of the county as well. So thank you for your question. Kevin, I'm going to allow your microphone.
Awesome. Thanks, Hannah. Thanks, Zach. Yeah, really excited to see the program expand. A couple of just like brief comments and then a question. One, I think you might have undersold the promise of e-bikes. I think this last month the report, the Capital Bikeshare, issues reports every month, and I believe more than 50% for the first time of trips were on e-bikes. So they are getting a ton of use. So this is a really big part of it. Introducing more, a heavier mix of e-bikes, I think is only going to, be beneficial to the county. And the other comment I wanted to make is it's really good to see, you mentioned in sort of as you're citing these, using these as an opportunity to for daylighting. For a lot of it seems like a lot of the spaces are in sort of existing no parking spots. I'm sure that those are spots that still sometimes see parking, even when it's not supposed to. So bike share stations are a great way to sort of really block off that space and really remind folks that no, this is not where you should be parking your vehicle. So really like that you're introducing that in the mix. And the only question I would add to that is, given the sort of long lead time we have with this, with installation really not happening for it seems at least another year, is there going to be an opportunity when you're installing these to sort of expand upon? I mean, obviously you're going to delineate with paint and whatnot directly around the station, but is there any appetite or openness to sort of expanding that, even if it's just like on that block, to sort of better delineate parking spaces or turn radii, right? If you're going to be out there with paint and whatnot, when you're putting these in, it would seem like a good opportunity to make those little small scale changes to sort of visually tighten a roadway or indicate just more clearly where folks shouldn't be with those vehicles. It just seems like a good opportunity. And the same thing could be said for bike racks. Another great tool to use for daylighting and to sort of block off certain spaces. And if we think there's enough bike usage to warrant a bike share station, surely there's probably enough usage to warrant additional bike racks as well. So just wanted to propose those as things to be thinking about. Again, you've got a long time, which is great. Yeah, hopefully we can really make this project more bang for their buck.
Yeah,
Thanks for the
thank you.
question. I just to clarify, we don't actually paint when we put the bike share station in. We don't paint on the road. Just add the 6 flex posts or 5 or 6 flex posts for posts to kind of delineate where discourage people from parking in front of the bike share station itself. But appreciate the other suggestions, and something we can look into with other funding sources and other projects.
Thank you. We can move on to, looks like a 925 phone number.
Your microphone.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Awesome. Sorry, this is Tyler. For some reason, I wasn't able to click the unmute on the Teams. So,
No
really
worries.
thank you both for the presentation. Really excited kind of for the expansion of Capital Bike Share. I'm an active user of it in Mason District. My question, I think, was twofold. First, how were kind of these sites selected or kind of identified for kind of potential? And then are there, or how would the public kind of recommend additional sites either in this process or down the road? For example, I live off of Edstall Road, kind of right at the Alexandria Fairfax County border in the Mason District, with the Van Dorn Metro about a mile from us and another Capital Bike Share station about a half mile from us, but kind of we're at the end of that area without kind of any bike shares and would be really interested in getting one in the future. So just curious kind of how that selection process happens and how the public can be involved in kind of making recommendations for future spots.
I can take these 2 questions, Hannah. So the sites were selected. We tried to look for residential density, really having being as close to apartment complexes and townhouses is kind of key. Public right of way, as I mentioned previously, we have to have solar access. So each station needs 4 hours of south facing sun for it to work. We can't put them on like, Little River Turnpike itself. We have to put them on kind of smaller, lower volume roads. But then of course we try to be as close to like Heritage Center and the H-Mart over there. We're trying to get as close as we can, but still be on public right of way with like one of those locations. So kind of serving a mix of destinations so that folks can go from point A to point B within the system. And then in terms of additional sites, I mean, we're always can always accept kind of back on additional locations. Just keep in mind that we don't currently have any for additional locations beyond going tonight. So certainly we're always open to feedback, but just the caveat that we don't currently have funding to add beyond what we proposed. So thank you for your question.
Any additional questions? I think. Oh yeah, okay. Okay, not seeing any additional hands right now. Just before we conclude, I'll just highlight the instructions up here on how to submit public comments and ask us any additional questions. Again, we'll be accepting feedback through Friday, September 6th. You could submit our public online feedback form at our website, engage.fairfaxcounty.gov/R2887. You can also submit feedback via phone and call us at 703-890-5898 using the project code 10501, or you can send us any feedback by mail. The address is up here to do that. And with that, I think we'll just conclude this meeting on Capital Bikeshare's expansion in the Mount Vernon in the Mason and Braddock districts. A recording of this meeting will be available on the county's Capital Bikeshare webpage in the next day or so. Thank you again so much for joining us tonight, and we really appreciate your time and participation.